right along to our second speaker of the day. A very talented young man who we well know here. He's a staple in this organization. Hector Perez, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Legendary race car driver Dale Earnhardt said, finishing races is important, but racing is more important. Now, I have a friend named Chris who lives by this principle. You see, Chris used to build race cars, and a lot of times we'd sit down and we'd have a drink and we'd talk about what it took to build a winning car. Every time he shared a story with me, I always thought to myself, well, how could I get more, how could I apply these racing principles into my own life? When he talked about speed and how he would work his tail off to get everything, every bit of horsepower he could out of his cars, I thought to myself, well, how could I get more horsepower out of myself? When he talked about wind resistance and how he would try to remove all, every bit of drag he could out of himself, I thought to myself, well, what could I do to remove resistance towards my goals? Because I always thought that success was measured by how far you went or how fast you could go, or whether or not you crossed the finish line first. But just like Dale Earnhardt, Chris used to say that it was more important to be in the race than to finish the race itself. Now, Chris was an incredible guy. He always had a way with words. I remember one time he said something to me that really stood out. He said, in his naturally deep voice, he said, "You know, Hector, we didn't always get it right. Sometimes we did things that worked against us. For instance, we put stickers on cars. And while it made the cars look great, he said it created resistance, or drag, as he put it. Now, drag, he said, could be defined as the natural force that works opposite to the relative motion of an object. He said, you may not realize it, but you have forces in your life that hold you back and slow you down. And, we keep trying to cross this finish line with all of these natural forces that are constantly working against us, and then we wonder why we haven't achieved our goals. And he said it's because of this drag that we're carrying around. Now I was half joking and half being serious when I said to him, well, wouldn't it be great if you could get rid of your drag? If you could fine-tune yourself to inspire high performance, to get yourself to move forward with less resistance in your life. And he looked at me like as if the way you look at your child when they say something dumb. He said, I'm going to share something with you that I call the drag principle, which was a racing acronym that stood for determine, remove, assemble, and go. Determine, remove, assemble, and go. He said, if you apply this drag principle in your life, you're essentially removing everything from your life that weighs you down, and you're stepping into a lighter and faster you. He said it's like building a car. He said the first thing you want to do is in NASCAR what they do is they have to determine the qualifying speed. In other words, they need to figure out how fast they need to go to win. Once they've determined that winning speed, he said the race crews start to remove all of the unnecessary components in the car that weigh it down. He said there's no roof racks, mud flaps, side view mirrors, or air conditioners. He said, hell, they don't even have windshield wipers equipped on a car. I'm talking about everything is removed to minimize resistance. And in essence, a new car is assembled. One that's faster, lighter, and designed to win. Now, it's important that, in order for us to apply these principles in our life, we have to learn how to determine, how to remove, assemble, and go. He said the first thing you have to do is you have to determine your goals. It doesn't have to be a major life goal, he said, but it better be something worthwhile. If there's something that you've been meaning to do, I'd like to invite you to go home today and write it down and make it a point to accomplish it this month. Once you determine your goal, the next thing you're going to want to do, he said, is you're going to want to consider the activities and the relationships in your life that hold you back. He said, what you do in your spare time today dictates how much spare time you get to have in the future. If you can, identify the people and the activities in your life that hold you back and resolve to remove those distractions from your life for good. Once they're removed, he said, you're going to want to assemble a plan. And Winston Churchill said that plans are of little importance, but that planning was essential. And Chris couldn't agree more. One time I argued with Chris. I said, Chris, you know, plans change. And again, he looked at me like that, you know, because he used to look like this. He said, you and I both know that plans change, but listen to me when I tell you that the process of planning is crucial to your success. And by the process, what he meant was the physical activity of looking at your goals and their completion dates and then spreading them out across the span of time. And then finally he said, after the car's tested and put back on the track, the race drivers just go. If you do this, if you apply this drag principle into your life, what's going to happen is you're going to cross the finish line with more speed and less resistance. But as Chris would say, you'll have been in the race. Now that was the last conversation that Chris and I had. I tried to call him, I tried to go by his place, but unfortunately we just couldn't touch base again. A few years later I found out from his wife that Chris had passed away. Now she said something to me that made his passing a little easier. She said Chris died with a smile on his face and that he looked like he had just crossed the finish line. In honor of my friend Chris, I'd like to ask you all to start applying the drag principle in your life today. If you would, repeat after me, please. Say, I determine my goals.
I determine my goals.
I remove my distractions.
I remove my distractions.
I assemble a plan.
I assemble a plan.
And I go.
And I go.
Once again, I determine my goals. I remove distractions. I assemble a plan.
I assemble a plan.
Come on, that's all right, man. Before I go, I'd like to propose a toast to my friend Chris, a man who believed that it was more important to be in the race than to finish the race itself. Thanks for keeping me on track, Chris. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to race with you today. Godspeed.